Hello my friends, my name is Maltenan and as you all know, my job is to make your life easier. So just sit back and relax and enjoy this short presentation of my most precious creation and my bestest solution ever, by far, called Simple Camera Rig. Now the spot that you see here on the left is the reason why I updated this simple camera rig to begin with, and you might have seen it already on my website, but this version I'm showing you right now is the version 2.0, and there's nothing simple about it anymore. Unless you count the way to use it, because that's still pretty simple, but everything else is really advanced. It works great with your favorite 3D plugins like Element 3D or Shapeshifter, Particular, or even native 3D layers in After Effects. Whatever you throw at it, it can handle. The fun fact is that the spot you're watching right now has only 2 keyframes as far as the camera is concerned for the entire project, and I don't recall making any more keyframes than that as far as the entire project is concerned, but I'll say that for later. Maybe I'll do a tutorial one day. So let me just show you how the simple camera rig works and how it can make your life easier. Since it's packed with many different features, I have separate tutorials covering that, so in this tutorial I'll only cover the very basics of it. Okay, so here we are in After Effects and I've got a simple sample scene set up. As you can see, I've got only 5 layers. Most of them, with the exception of the shadow, are Element 3D layers. So I've got the room, I've got the car, I've got the reflection of the car, which is the same layer duplicated, only that the car was rotated 180 degrees. And I've got the glass, which is the same model, only simplified, and with only the glass elements visible, so I could use the blending modes. I just like it that way. So now if we would like to animate the camera, we would do it the traditional way and we would get in a lot of troubles with keyframes and stuff. So this is when we use my simple camera rig. And the way to launch it is just simply by clicking this button. Now I've got it set up on my FT toolbar, which is not my script, but you can get it also here at aescripts.com. It's not required to run my simple camera rig, however it is highly recommended. It's just really convenient to click this little button. So that's what I'm gonna do now. I'm gonna launch the script, and as you can see, my simple camera rig got created. I've got my cam controls layers and I've got my multi-rigged camera. You will notice that the shy layer was switched on and I've got 1 and 5th layer, so the 1st and the 5th. And the layers in between are the layers that are required for the cam rig to run. Why they are there, I will explain in an additional tutorial. For now, let's just say they are needed. So let's just go ahead and check out the settings. So here are the basic settings that you will be using most often. We've got the heading, which allows for rotating the camera around the object. We've got the pitch, which allows us to tilt around the object, so up and down movement. We've got the bank parameter, which allows us to rotate sideways, and we've got the track, which allows us to zoom in and out of an object. So let's just reset those parameters and the rest is history. We can just do regular keyframes. If you want to move the entire camera, you just move this null object. So I'm going to position it right in the middle of the car. As you can see, it sits actually right in the middle of the car, right here, and the camera is far back. So right now I can just rotate it like that. Maybe change the settings of the camera to be like 20mm preset. I think this will give us a nice looking angle. Yep, we can just zoom in a little bit closer. And now we can just simply also maybe do a little bit of banking like this. I'm going to set up the keyframe for the bank and the heading. I'm going to move to the 10-second marker and rotate the camera here and also reverse the bank like that. And there we go. Here's our first simple animation. It looks really nice and it was really simple to do. The next on the list is the autofocus feature. So let's just go ahead and try that in another composition. I've got my camera rig already created in here. So let's just move it to position like so, and I think I want to do a movement that goes along the wheels. So in order to do that, I'm gonna position the null right here and maybe put it lower, so right on the axis. And I'm gonna go to the top view and push it over here. It's just easier that way. And go back to my active camera. So now I'm gonna rotate the rig like that, and I think I will change the preset of the camera as well. Okay, it's 20mm already, so I guess that's good. So we have to use the track option like this, and we are right on the axis of the wheel, and this is our sort of a point that we will be referencing later on, right? This is what's supposed to look right. So what I want to do now is I want to pull back a little bit on the x-axis. So I'm gonna move it right about here. I don't really care exactly where, because I can cut this comp in whatever place I like once I will be putting all the cams that we're doing together in Adobe Premiere. So I think this is right about that. I think this looks good. So now all we have to do is click the autofocus feature enabled. We can leave the aperture and the blur level at default, and now we have to choose the focus target. So for this example, I think I'm going to use the cam controls layer itself. So we'll be focusing at this null object. So now what we need is just to have a movement of this null. We could do this using keyframes, but I wouldn't be myself if I didn't include some additional way to do this. So we can go to the rig movement settings, and we can go to the 10-second marker and simply just set the speed of this rig on the x-axis. So I want it to go beyond the car, somewhere like that. And again, I can cut this composition after I render it, and then just, mix and match with other comps to make the final animation. So that's kind of convenient. And let's just take a look at how it looks. As you can see, the focus point is exactly where the null is. So right now the rims are in focus. That looks really nice, but I think it's missing something. We could use a little bit of this banking as well. So we can also do that by using the camera movement parameter and the bank speed. So what I want to have is I want to move to the beginning of the comp and set it to maybe this angle as my starting point, and whatever speed I want, I can set maybe right here, because this is the place in time where it's supposed to look right. So I'm putting the current time indicator right here, and I can now change the banking speed to something that will just look right. And this is about it. And the fun thing is that this will continue on banking in this direction with the constant speed across the entire comp. So the final result looks something like this. Okay, that looks really great. So let's move forward. Of course, we can add, like additional nulls in here. We can even create nulls from Element 3D itself, since that's been added in the 1.6 update. So if you like, you can maybe create a null object right on the tail lights, and then say that this is your focal point. So all of that can be done. Let's move forward. Here we have another composition, the same setup. So I'm just going to position the camera rig in the right spot, right about here, and I'm gonna rotate it as well. Something like this, and maybe just zoom in a little bit. And let's say that I'm doing this for a number of comps, like I usually do. And I would like to keep the speed of the animation constant across all of the comps. So I don't want to go back and forth and reset all the camera movement or the rig movement settings each time to match up. So what I can do is I can use the global movement. And here's a very convenient use global settings checkbox. But where do the global settings come from? Well, we have to create them. And the way to create them is really simple. All you have to do is click and run the script holding the Control key, because you want to gain more control over the cameras. So I'm just going to hold down the Control and run the rig, and this will create an additional composition. And if we go here, we will see a cam global layer, And if we go to the effects palette, we've got the heading speed, pitch speed, all of those settings that I just talked about set to a 0 parameter. So right now we can set the banking speed maybe to -2, and maybe the Y speed to -5, and maybe heading to 30. I'm just guessing. They will probably not look good enough, but this is just for the testing purposes. So right now I haven't set anything. As you can see, those parameters did go through, and right now nothing happens because I haven't checked the use global settings checkbox. So I'm gonna do that right now, and the animation starts as expected. And of course all other settings still work. So you can set the starting point by changing the heading. You can also animate the heading if you wish to sort of counter the effects of the global settings. You can of course do that with the camera movement and rig movement as well, but that would kind of defeat the purpose. But on the other hand, if for example I don't want to have the banking speed, all I have to do really is just set this parameter to 2. It will counteract the reference banking speed, and there will be no banking in this case. Or maybe if we want in this specific camera from all the other cameras we've created using global settings to have the banking speed the same but in another direction, we have to set it to 4, right? Because basically the 0 point have shifted to by -2 units. So, you know, pretty simple stuff. So as you can see, this works, and it doesn't really look that bad. So let's move forward. What if you are like me and you like to have everything pre-comped and well organized? Right now we've got like 10 layers in our composition. So what if we would add more stuff to our composition? It would become really cluttered, and we don't like that. So let me just go to this composite, and as you can see, I've got the car as a pre-comp, and I've got the lights composition. So let's just go ahead and take a look at this. As you can see, I've got 2 null objects, and I've got a black solid with the lens flares applied to it. And basically the lens flares get their 2-dimensional position from the 3-dimensional position of the null. This is something that is covered all over the internet, so I'm not going to get into that. But the interesting thing is that I needed to move the camera that I have somehow to that pre-comp, right? Because those layers are not aware of the camera that I have in this composition. The same with the car. The car is built exactly the same. These are the same layers, only with the little fact that I have a mimic camera in here. So I'm just gonna delete it over here and in the lights as well, and you will see how that will normally look. This is how it looks, right? Pretty crappy, not what we want. So in order to create a mimic camera, all that we have to do is run the script holding the shift key. So that's what I'm gonna do. And my mimic camera was created, and it doesn't really have to be mimicking my rig. It can mimic any active camera from any composition. So all I have to do now is just cut it and paste it over to this composition and to this composition. And thanks to that, I've got my camera movement all figured out. I can actually maybe zoom out a little bit so we can see our lens flares, and that looks pretty good. So let's move forward. Another feature. The mimic camera works in 2 ways. It can either be referencing the other composition in absolute values, so the exact name of the composition, or it could be referencing the other composition relatively to the composition that the mimicking camera is in. So check this out. For example, let's just go into this setup and get rid of this mimic camera and get rid of this mimic camera, which we're referencing the absolute path to this composition. And now I want to make this a relative mimicking camera. So to do that, I have to launch the script holding Shift and Control, because you want it to be shifting the camera from some other composition and be smart about it. So Shift, Control, and launching the script. And as you can see, the name of my mimic camera has changed, and now it has a dot as a separator. And that is important because this way of mimicking the camera requires you to have at least one dot in the name of your composition. You will see that I have a special naming convention. I've got the name of the camera, name of the shot or whatever, dot, and then the name of the element that is contained in the pre-comp. So right now, if I just copy this over, this mimicking camera will say, take the name of my composition that I'm currently in to the place where the last dot is. So in other words, in this case, this will be cam 04. And then take the word that I've got in here, which is composite. And that makes the name of the composition that I should be looking at in order to mimic a camera. So in this case, it will take a look at the cam 04 dot and then composite. So this comp. This may seem a little bit complex, but it's really useful, and I'm going to show that in another tutorial. So we've got this, and I'm going to put this mimicking camera in here as well. And again, we've got this complete look. But wait, that's not all. So here we have another example, and as you can see, I've got 2 cars and no camera. The reason for that is that I really wanted to show you that it's not a trick. It's really mind-blowing. So first of all, let me create a new camera just to show you that I'm not cheating or anything. And I'm going to rotate it just a tiny bit so you can see that there are in fact 2 cars in the composition. So there is another camera rig out there somewhere on the internet which is quite popular, and it's called Sure Target. Well, guess what? I know you guys use it, so I figured why not to build in a support for Sure Target in my simple camera rig. So all you have to do in order to use Sure Target in conjunction with my simple camera rig, all you have to do is to simply run the script holding Ctrl, Shift, and Alt. So this is the most advanced thing, right? So Ctrl, Alt, Shift, and clicking on the rig, and this will create the Sure Target, which is the base of the rig, and to that I've got my simple camera rig attached, and from that point on you can do whatever you like. So let's just play a little bit with Sure Target for now. Let's move to the maybe 1 second marker. And first of all, we have to select the layers. So I'm going to click on Sure Target and then Control click on those 2 layers and go to Target Layers, click Execute, and that should put those 2 layers in order as my targets, as you know. So right now we're going to create some keyframes. Sure Target here, maybe move to the 2 second marker and move it to the layer number 2. That's okay. But how do we rotate the camera? Well, this is where my simple camera rig comes in, and we can just maybe rotate it like that. We can also move my rig a little bit higher so we can see the floor. But still, everything is relative to the Sure Target, so that's pretty awesome. We're gonna change the camera again to maybe 20 millimeters. That looks about right. We can use the track. That's good. And as you can see, it does work. We are moving using Sure Target across those 2 cars. But the cool thing about this is that my simple camera rig still works. So we can use autofocus, we can use camera movement, rig movement, global movement. So in this case, I think we're gonna use the camera movement. Yeah. So let's just bank it a little bit like this. And we are going to move to this place. Let's see how many, 1 second. So let's say that 3 seconds is our finishing point. So in here, I would like the banking to be a little bit different, like this. And also I want the camera to be facing in a different direction so that I can see this side of the car. Okay, so this is pretty sweet. Let's take a look at how it looks. pretty awesome. But that's not all, seriously. So far we've looked at the situation where the object is stationary and we're moving the camera around it in many different ways. But what about if the object is moving and then we want to sort of attach the camera to it? Well, I've got you covered. As you can see, here's another example, and I've got a car driving along a road like so, and the camera is not really even attached to the car, but it's sort of always looking at the car from the same angle, right? It's not attached to it, but it's sort of looking at it from a certain position. So that's kind of cool, and it's really easy to do. The whole scene is set up in a way that I have a leader layer that the car is attached to and all sorts of other layers. So I could as well just attach my simple camera rig to it. So that's exactly what I did. Take a look. That the cam controls layer is attached by simply parenting it to the leader layer. And that's exactly what's happening here. So let's just take a look at from the top view. That's gonna be maybe more visible what's going on. I can actually turn this layer off for now, the car layer, but because we still have the shadow layer and that tells us where the car is. So as you can see, we've got this camera that is always at the same angle. So the whole rig is moving along with the car, but it's not rotating along with the car. So what if we would like it to be rotating along with the car? So have sort of a doggy cam effect. I believe that's how you call it in English. So let's just try that. How can we do that? Well, the great thing about the camera rig is that it works as you would expect it. So once you've got it parented to something, there's nothing preventing you from using auto orient feature. So I'm gonna right click on the leader layer, go to the transform, auto orient, and say orient along path. And right now, of course, the camera gets shifted, right? Because the layer is oriented. But take a look at this. It is attached to the car. And of course, again, nothing prevents us from animating all of these parameters. So it is pretty awesome. As you can see, I've got the autofocus set to my leader layer, so the car is always in focus no matter what. So let's just go back to the active camera and turn the car on and take a look at it. So this is exactly how it looks. I don't really like that because it seems like the whole ground is moving underneath the car. I don't really like that look. At least not when the whole car is visible. But if we would maybe zoom in to the light or the wheels, let's just try that. Something like this, and move the cam rig a little bit lower like that. This could be kind of an interesting look. And please take note that this is a sort of a test preview road setup that I did some time ago, so it doesn't look as it's supposed to. But we've got everything that we want. You know, the ground is moving and the background is moving. Looks amazing. Okay, so I guess that's it for this short introduction of my new simple camera rig version 2.0. I don't think I missed any of the features, although I wouldn't be surprised because there are so many of them. Make sure to check out the additional tutorials that I've got covering all of the features in depth and revealing some workflow techniques that will really make you scratch your head thinking, how did I ever do my 3D work without it? Once again, my name is Moltanen. Thanks for watching. Happy After Effecting.